Hi, I'm JLieb. I'm CEO of a company called IT School Innovation in South Africa. I'm also affiliated with the University of Pretoria, Department of Information Science, and I've been asked to do a short paper where I just speak a little bit about how we understand our understanding of ebooks and what we do with ebooks in South Africa, especially on tablets. So today my talk will be about 10 or 15 minutes, and the topic of my presentation is rethinking ebooks in the 21st century. I'll be using Prezi for my presentation. So when we start, rethinking ebooks for the 21st century, what we want to look at, obviously we're doing this in a specific context. So what is the context? I mean, all of you know the buzzwords. We talk about ebooks, digital learning, digital natives, tablets, big data, social media and learning, MOOCs, 21st century teaching, 21st century learning. I mean, these terms are all, we bandy those terms about, we use them. And yet there's a lot that we need to think about when we want to do e-learning in this environment. So what do I mean by that? I mean, one of the words that people keep using is they are talking about personalized education. What do we mean with personalized education? Now, from our perspective, we don't have a very complicated view of what that means. We just say personalized education, or if you've got a personalized education framework, you do three things. Or you take teachers, you take learners, you take the curriculum, and you put them together in one framework where all three of those elements have got exactly the same powers or are exactly empowered in the same way by technology. So in a certain sense, that's what a school is. A school is a place where these three elements are tied in together. The same for a MOOC or whatever, it's just the platform maybe of delivery differs. But if we want to say we want to make a personalized experience for learners, where we take a curriculum and tailor make it for them, we need to step back a minute and just say, okay, what are the aspects influencing what we do? What are the metaphors underlying what we do? And I ask you to just bear with me a little bit in terms of the following section. So there's been a lot of work done by Lakoff and Johnson, since 1980, the famous book Metaphors We Live By. Turner has published quite a lot on that, so is Johnson. You've got the references there. And the important thing about the work that they've done is the fact that they stress the metaphoric nature of a lot of the work that we do. I mean, one of the tenets of second generation cognitive linguistics is that they say even scientific language is inherently metaphoric. Now, obviously, many of their claims have been disputed, but the one thing that's not been disputed is that our ordinary conceptual system, in terms of which we both think and act, is fundamentally metaphoric. What does that mean? What does it mean? It means that a lot of the thinking we do, a lot of the work we do mentally, when we talk about things, when we think about things, is done in metaphorical ways. Some of the easier examples that we can look at there is when we say to someone, you know what, your claims are indefensible. If we say that, basically, we're working with a metaphor that says, an argument is a war and it's about winning it. He attacked every weak point in my argument. It's the same. I mean, that's one of the famous examples. And his claims were right on target. If we say that again, metaphor, or we see an argument as from the viewpoint of a war. Now, similarly, when we talk about life, we can say, oh, you are going nowhere. What does that mean? If we say people are going nowhere, it means that we say we're looking and thinking about life as a journey. And this person, the way he's plodding along, he will not get anywhere. Similarly, if you continue like this, you will never reach your goal. All of these are ways of talking about the world that in metaphorical ways. And it's very important that we get this, because the moment we start looking at the world in this way, it helps us to start questioning these common sense metaphors. Many of them, we just assume that they are correct because we get them. As we learn language, it becomes part of our fabric, part of the way that we conceptualize the world, and part of the way that we think. And often we don't question these. One of the obvious ones is we talk about knowledge and we think about knowledge as an object. The ways in which we talk about knowledge is that it's just giving someone. I'm giving a lecture. I'm providing you with information. I'm providing you with knowledge, as if Knowledge is an object that you can take and you can give it to someone else. So, and those metaphors we need to think about, because is it about knowledge as an object, or is knowledge, should we rather start thinking about it as a process and so on? And there's all kinds of studies and philosophical arguments and things about that. What we want to look at today is some of the metaphors that inform the way we think about e-learning. And I want to just focus on that. As I said, to just give some perspective in terms of the stuff and the work that we are doing in South Africa. Now, quite interesting is if we talk about blended learning, I mean, the word blended, the term blended learning is already a metaphor, because a blended learning is a metaphor where you say we take two things and we blend them. And in order to blend something, it means that we're talking about something that is, that is pliable, or it's maybe even if you talk about a blend, we think about wine, and it's something similar. So we're saying we're taking two things and we are blending them together so that a new entity gets created. So one of the, I've just got two definitions here. Blended learning is a formal education program in which a student learns at least in part through online delivery of content and instruction, with some element of student control over the time, place, path, and or pace, and at least in part at a supervised brick and mortar location away from them. So what we're saying there, I mean, that definition is saying you're putting the brick and mortar teaching and the online teaching, you're blending those two together. Another definition, blended learning is part of the ongoing convergence of two archetypical learning environments. On the one hand, we have the traditional face-to-face learning environment that has been around for centuries. On the other hand, we have distributed learning environments that have begun to grow and expand in exponential ways as new technologies have expanded the possibilities for distributed communication and interaction. And that is obviously the definition by Graham. So what's obvious from these definitions is that there's a metaphor inherent to it, and the metaphor says that you are blending two ways of doing education. So now going forward from that, if you then take that as your metaphor, as your understanding of teaching, then how do you then go about it? So let's just take a closer look at a typical education framework. Obviously, our education is informed by teaching theory, whether we know about it or not. We could be behaviorists, we could be social constructivists. It all depends on our upbringing or our teaching or the school that we've gone. Recently, it looks like social constructivism has won the day, at least for now, in terms of teaching. But that teaching theory then informs your interaction model, the model with which you interact with learners. So you've got the teaching theory. From the teaching theory, you get the interaction model, and that then has an impact on it. So you could have one where you say, right, okay, it's one-to-one teacher-learner. You can have one where you say, no, but you know what, we are going for a little bit more interaction between the teacher and even allow that between learners. But, given that on all those models, it's important to realize that no technology will prevent you or help you to do teaching in a certain way. If that is your interaction model, you will use that model, no matter the fact that you've got so Blackboard is typical for a one-to-one. I speak, you listen. In that model, it works perfectly well. But you know what? Even if you get an interactive whiteboard, that model just remains the same. If you get an SMS, cell phone, even if it's an ebook, that's largely going to stay the same. You can obviously say, oh, you know what? When it's two-way, you can have interactive whiteboards because it could have student activities. You can do those. I mean, Khan Academy is maybe an example of a little bit of a more two-way because they've got some interaction in the fact that they can determine how you think, what you understand, and so on. And there's feedback from the system. But the important thing is to realize that no matter what technology you use, your particular understanding of the world and of teaching is directly informed by your teaching theory, the resultant interaction model. And then if you get technology, it doesn't matter how competent the technology is or what possibilities it has. If your model doesn't allow for that, you will just keep doing it the same way as you've always done it before. So then going forward, what are we then saying? Okay, so let's just take this a step further and say, good. Let's look at now, get a little bit closer to our actual topic. Metaphor and rethinking our understanding of the concept book. If we think back about the time when Gutenberg invented the printing press in the 15th century. Before that, only privileged people had access to books and so on. But books also obviously had a particular form, and that form was then taken forward when people started printing books. So what did you have? You had sheets of paper, and they were bound together on the side, and that remained the same. Obviously, what changed is the manner in which these books were reproduced. They were no longer written, and so on. Now, let's just think a little bit. When we think about a book, all our thinking, we normally think about a book as a container, because it's got a front page, it's got a back cover, it's got the content inside. So that the result of a book looking the way that it does is that we think of books as containers. We never taught that model. It's not like someone goes around and says, listen, a book is a container. But because of the physical format of a book, we start thinking of textbooks in that way. That's the way we work. So there's a root metaphor, there's a conceptual metaphor of a textbook that sees it as a container. And that metaphor is tied in very closely with the way that the book looks. Now you take that one step further, then all of a sudden a book becomes a place where you find the culmination of knowledge. Someone writes a book, they put together research from all kinds of places, they write a textbook, and that textbook is the culmination of knowledge. It's the end point of learning. So there's a lot of scholarship involved. There it is. It's there. Even in the way that we treat the curriculum. So you've got the curriculum, and now what do? You take that, you write it up in the form of a textbook, and then that textbook is packaged in such a way that it is an end product, an end result. But in a digital age, we need to question that metaphor as a container. If you look about the way that some companies online are providing ebooks, if you look at the way what people do, essentially the model of a book as a container still exists exactly like that. Yes, you get interactive exercises and you get all kinds of nice things inside those books. But inherently, those books represent knowledge as is at a given moment. It does not invite collaboration. It does not invite going beyond the borders of that book. At most, perhaps, there will be links inside that has been pre-programmed into the book. You click on them, they take you outside, but it's all in all, it's a closed environment. In the digital age, we need to break down the metaphor of a book as a container. We need to start thinking about an ebook as a platform for teaching and learning. We need to say to ourselves, you know what? An ebook becomes a point of departure for learning, for discovery, for engagement, for collaboration. And if we start thinking about that, if we start breaking these boundaries that are set by a book being a container, it allows for us to start doing radically different things with our textbooks. And I know a lot of that has already happened here and there. It's starting to happen in the way that people treat books. But I'm not sure that many of you have come across a solution yet where people do the following, where they actually go and say a sound blended learning environment ensures that all three elements of the so-called teaching triangle are equally empowered through the use of integrated technology, so as to ensure that teaching outcomes become attainable for as many learners as easily as possible. What would that mean practically? You would say, but yeah, you know what, that's quite obvious. Let me give you an example. This is an example of an electronic textbook. You can see there clearly, if you look at there, it's got the typical structure of a textbook. It's got highlights there. But then, quite interesting, inside this textbook, what do you find there? You find all kinds of content that's been added to that textbook. Now, it's quite important to realize that there's two sections of content here. These are the content that's been added by the user of the book, by the learner. And these content elements have all been added by the teacher. The teacher has done this on the fly as kids are working with the material. So the kids don't have to go and update their books. It all happens automatically. So what does that mean? All of a sudden, this closed platform, this closed textbook has become a place where you get a unique version of it between a teacher and learner, because this particular version for this learner and this teacher, there's no other copy in the world like that, because this copy has got the work of the learner inside it. It's also got content that the teacher has been able to push directly into the textbook. All the kids get it, or maybe on a differentiated level, and from there you can start doing things like collaborate, because now learners can collaborate in this platform. And all of this built in standard digital formats. Now, this is what we've been doing in South Africa. We've been working, our company and the work that we've been doing in schools. We are already in quite a number of schools locally, and we've been able to go and say, let's take a textbook. Why do we take the textbook? People may ask, but you know what? What's this focus on the textbook? Well, it's quite simple. If you are going to teach thousands of kids, hundreds of thousands, millions of learners on a standardized curriculum, a curriculum in which they need to all be assessed against, it means that the textbook is an integral part of that solution. You can't ignore that there is a textbook. As a matter of fact, the textbook and the content, that's what they're supposed to be assessed on. Yes, obviously also critical thinking, also what they can do with it, but the critical thinking about what? About topics that are addressed inside the textbook. And what better way to get critical thinking going and get kids to think critically and work interactively than providing textbook as a platform where learners are able to do exactly that. And this is what we've been doing, and this is what we've been advocating with a great success. The moment you show this sort of solution to any educator, they start thinking, gee, it means I don't have to worry that my kids don't get the resource I've got. So maybe you've got printed documents. You don't have to have printed. You don't have to print. But maybe I've had some presentations, yes. So you make them available on a 20th century solution. 20th century would be where you make it available on a platform and the kids have to go fetch it from somewhere. But in the 21st century, we push content. We don't wait for content to be delivered. We push it. It happens to learners. They don't want to look and find that it needs to be there, especially stuff that they regard as self-evident or that's an integral part of the course. Yes, they can go and find and collaborate and do all kinds of things upon instruction. But it doesn't mean that the normal day-to-day stuff has to be there somewhere on a tablet, somewhere on a device that they have to go find it. So I'm preparing for exams. So oh yes, there was a great video. Where was it delivered? Where is it now? No, nothing more of that. My textbook, the place where I need to engage with the textbook, with the content, that's where I'll find that. And one of the reasons why this is important for us is we found that a lot of learners get to university having gotten many distinctions in school, but they don't know how to engage with the textbook, simply because in our environment, textbooks have to be returned to school. They're not allowed to make any marks inside those textbooks. It doesn't become their property. In this particular model, that textbook, the one that you see now, that becomes my product. It is my textbook. It's my possession. I can work with it. I can scribble in it. I can engage with it. But the nice thing is I can do it now in a very, very different way because I am now part of a conversation between the educator and myself. So just to get back to a point we made earlier, if we talk about personalized education, we're talking about personalized education on a mass scale, massified personalization, for lack of a better word, where teachers, learners, and the curriculum are being combined. And how does that happen? It happens when you get a textbook that becomes interactive and that allows you to do this on a massified scale. Now, just to maybe explain this a little bit easier or different, I'm going to conclude with a small video. It's about 3 minutes, which explains, the relationships and how it works. You can obviously find it also on YouTube, but that just gives you an idea of the different role players, what the advantage is to a parent, to a learner, to a school principal, to a teacher. The moment you start looking at a system where the textbook becomes an integral part, but the textbook is not static, but it's dynamic and interactive, and it invites collaboration and working together. So on the next slide, you will see that video.
Schools switched to tablets with CAPS-approved ebooks. These ebooks could be filled with extra teacher resources, such as interactive activities, videos, audio files, and links to the coolest educational websites. Create your own notes, sketches, highlights, and generate an automatic summary. Test yourself with exercises on difficult areas of work. Plus, all your ebooks and resources would also be available offline, available anytime, anywhere. Yes, we know. That would be awesome. Teachers normally have a lot of extra resources, such as their own documents, images, and subject videos. Wouldn't it be great if you could send these directly into your learners' ebooks and it would be available to them instantly? What about self-grading assessments, providing immediate feedback to you and your learners? Would that not be great? Go ahead. Send out school newsletters, test dates, and announce fun days with a digital calendar to learners and parents alike. And all of this never gets lost because the information is automatically backed up on a server and in the cloud. Yes, we agree. That sounds like a perfect school, one designed by a teacher. A school principal can create the perfect school by blending traditional teaching with 21st century technology in a responsible way, monitoring and tracking teacher and learner activities, receiving accurate learner usage statistics from your learners, all while maintaining your rigorous standards and keeping your school information safe, secure, always backed up, and saving thousands on printing costs. As a parent, you want affordable world-class education for your child. You value technology, and you know that ebooks are more cost-effective and environmentally friendly than traditional textbooks. Wouldn't it be brilliant if you could equip your child for the future without compromising their learning experience or the quality of their teaching? There is an educational solution for learners, teachers, principals, and parents of the 21st century. Something that combines the best of traditional teaching with cutting-edge technology and innovation. We are proud to present the IT School Innovation Personalized Education Framework. The suite of products facilitates blended teaching and learning in a variety of contexts, ranging from a traditional classroom to a flipped learning environment. It links teachers, learners, and the curriculum on a perfect and easy-to-use education platform. Our sales and support team will be by your side every step of the way, helping your school implement the framework so that learners, teachers, principals, and parents can reap the benefits. Visit our website and contact the sales executive to assist you in bringing all the aspects of 21st century education to your fingertips.
So thank you very much for being part of this presentation. I know it was a bit short and so on, but I wanted to make the one point, and that point is just that we've done exciting stuff, and for us it's only the foundation of much greater things that are already in the pipeline. And that foundation is that the moment we realize that in the 21st century the nature of a textbook is different, we think we found something that's very exciting, and that is scalable in an environment where learners are still examined on a big scale against a big curriculum, a static, unified curriculum that everybody needs to do together. So I thank you for your time and your patience.